Act 1 of Breaking Winnie, a comedy in 3 acts by Carl Webster Pierce. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Stage directions read by Marie Christian. Characters:
Winnie Bronson, read by Jenn Broda.
A pretty little scatterbrained blonde of about 22. Willful, selfish, and strong-headed when things don't just suit her. All sunshine and smiles when they do. Wears a pretty summer dress over which she later wears Olga's apron.
Margaret Bronson, read by Anna Maria.
An attractive young woman of about 30, an authoress of some note. Wears huge shell-rimmed glasses at first entrance. She may wear any pretty summer dresses desired.
Myra Green, read by Kendra.
A country bumpkin of about 22, uneducated, unsophisticated, and most unattractive in a plain house dress with her hair slicked back. At the end of Act 1, she wears a modish knicker suit, also white silk stockings and high-heeled pumps, in which she painfully hobbles about. Act 2 and Act 3, long skirt and shirtwaist with long sleeves and chin-high collar. Bow of scarlet ribbon pinned on her breast.
Alice Carter, read by Molehill Mountain.
A slender black-haired girl of about 19. She is a very practical, common-sense person with an air of refinement. Wears simple summer dresses.
Olga Johnson, read by Lynette Caulkins.
A red-faced, smiling Swedish girl of about 30. Speaks in a scanning, sing-song sort of voice. She wears a cap and a huge all-over apron, which is covered with flour, as are her arms. Her hair is done high on her head. On her second appearance, she is arrayed in a beautiful evening gown into which she is barely able to squeeze, and wears stout hiking boots. Her arms are still covered with flour. Acts 2 and 3, afternoon dress of her own.
Valentine Romaine, read by Rick Cordray.
A peculiar, serious-appearing youth of about 25. His hair is quite long and parted in the middle. He wears a low collar and a flowing black artist tie and huge shell-rimmed glasses.
Pete McGlinchey, read by Wayne Cook.
About 38, a short, robust, fierce-looking individual with a very ruddy face, heavy black eyebrows and mustache. He is slightly bald, the edge of the spot being revealed beneath a brown derby hat, which hangs perilously on the back of his head. He wears a rusty-looking frock coat and a flowered vest. A huge black unlighted cigar is held at an upward angle in his mouth. In his tie and on his fingers great jewels sparkle, and a mammoth watch chain is draped across his vest.
Ed Roper, read by Todd.
A very tall, lean man, about 30. Smooth-faced, bronzed by sun and wind, has a pleasant face and speaks with a soft southern drawl. He is dressed in typical cowboy attire, chaps, flannel shirt, broad-brimmed hat, spurs, cartridge belt, and holster.
Arthur Gray, read by Redrun.
A good-natured young man of about 25, wears summer clothes.
Reverend Mr. Darling, read by Jim Hedrick.
An elderly minister. He wears sideburns, steel-rimmed glasses, and a dark suit. Breaking Winnie, Act 1. Scene: living room of the Bronson summer home. A Monday afternoon. Entrance up center by a double doorway opening into a hall. Doors down left and up right. Down right is a fireplace in which there are some charred logs. A mirror hangs over the fireplace. Window up left. There is a large table right center on which are books, magazines, etc. The table cover must be large so that when thrown over a standing person it would reach nearly to the floor. Several chairs are placed about the room. Discovered: Margaret reading. Her wrist is bandaged and in a sling. Enter Myra Green, right. Myra walks in slowly, spelling out the postmark on a letter she carries.
Texas. Texas, golly.
What have you there, Myra?
Letter. It's a Jim Walloper, too. All the way from Texas.
Is it for me?
Myra scrutinizes it closely.
No, it's for Miss Winnie.
I will take it. My sister has gone upstairs.
All right, Miss Margaret. Look at all the stamps. It came registered and special delivery. Some letter.
Margaret taking it with a smile as she glances at it.
I think my sister will consider it some letter, too.
Resumes her book. Myra stands gazing at her.
Ain't you gonna read it? I wonder who it's from.
That is Miss Winnie's affair.
I suppose so. If she weren't of age, you'd read it too, wouldn't you?
Probably. Now run along.
Yes, Miss Margaret.
Slowly drags herself toward right, murmuring,
Some letter.
Exit Myra right. Margaret goes to center and calls.
Winnie, do come here. Here is a letter which I think will interest you.
I'm on my way.
Enter Winnie center.
Isn't another from Pete, is it?
No, it's from Texas.
Winnie opening letter.
That's all right. Dear old steer roper Ed.
As she reads the letter, a broad grin at the start gradually changes to a scowl and then to a look of combined alarm and annoyance.
My good heavens, what shall I do?
What's the trouble?
Read that.
While Margaret reads, Winnie paces slowly about.
What put that notion into his head? What shall I do? The old fool.
Margaret with a quiet smile as she slips the letter into her pocket.
No, sister. I would look in the mirror and say, you young fool, if I were you.
How are you going to get me out of this mess?
I am not going to. I shall offer one suggestion. You may take it or leave it.
Well?
Marry Arthur at once.
I won't. I intend to go south and have a good time this winter, and if I am married, I can't.
Then you must face the consequences.
Very well. You're a nice one not to help your own sister.
It would serve you right if Arthur were to throw you over.
No danger. I have him all tied up.
Going to tell Art about this?
She holds up the letter. Winnie with a shrug.
I don't know.
Then I shall.
Very well. Do as you wish.
Arthur appears at center.
I think that Arthur should know about it.
Enter Arthur center.
Then by all means tell him.
Hello, Art.
To Winnie.
Shall you or I?
Go to it.
I must run upstairs and get the other epistle. We'll be back in a second, Art. Won't keep you in suspense very long.
That's all right. Winnie is here, and I can propose to her again while you're gone.
Exit Margaret at center.
Please put on a new record.
You love me, don't you, Winnie dear?
Why, of course, Arthur Gray.
And you really intend to marry me?
Winnie regarding her engagement finger.
Didn't I say so when you gave me that?
Yes, that was 3 years ago. When will it be?
Oh, sometime.
Oh, won't you be definite?
Probably next summer. Think of the glorious time I can have traveling through the South, single. But if I were married, I'd have to be a dutiful wife and stay up in the cold with you. A girl ought to have all the good times she can.
That's what you have been saying for 3 years. Won't you make it sometime this fall, Winnie dear?
Kissing him lightly.
You might as well learn now, Art, that it is useless to waste your breath. You are the most stubborn thing I have ever met.
And you are the worst procrastinator I can imagine. If you would only try to see my point of view.
We will close the subject.
You may be certain I shall reopen it as soon as I get my breath.
You should have saved it in the first place. Don't get tiresome.
Winifred, sometimes I wish that I could become so disgusted with your actions that I would clear out and not care if I never saw you again. I'd be justified.
He smiles forlornly.
But the only degree of disgust that I can muster up is pathetic.
Winnie holding up her little finger.
You do seem to travel around in quite a docile manner, don't you?
Too well you know it. But watch out, and remember that you had warning.
Enter Margaret Center with an additional letter in her hand.
Well, children, is Lover's Quarrel number umpty-umph finished? I've really lost track of the serial number. Couldn't count fast enough.
We'll declare an armistice now that you have returned. It looks as though you are the only one of this trio who is going to be able to pass any remarks about the end of a perfect day when the moon rises.
There is no earthly reason why you cannot, Arthur Gray.
I know it. It is simply unearthly the way you persist in putting things off.
Cheer up, Arthur.
Waves the letters.
Here is one thing, or rather two, that our little shrew won't be able to put off.
If you hold me to meeting the authors of those awful things, I shall never do another thing for you on this earth.
You have brought it upon yourself. You should have been more discreet. I have carried on correspondence for nearly a year without getting out of bounds, and these come after my little sister has been writing only a month.
What's it all about?
You are crazy to keep that string of nuts on your list.
Perhaps I am, but it means dollars and cents to me.
That's good enough reason for anything these days.
Huh. If I were an author, I guess that I wouldn't have to resort to any correspondence club for mail.
What?
If you were a writer, perhaps publishers would not be clamoring for your manuscripts as they do for mine. Perhaps you would be writing life, not as it is, but as you think it is.
Oh, what a conglomeration it would be.
Amen to that, Art.
Keep it up. See who can say the meanest thing to me.
I shall continue as I have started. Every distinct personality, every queer individual whom I meet in my travels remains on my correspondence list. For the human nature I shall be able to get between the covers of my books in that way is unbelievable.
That may be all right, with those you have met. It's this correspondence club business which put the fat in the fire.
What is it? I thought they were all acquaintances.
Most of them are, but about a year ago I ran across an ad in a cheap magazine which read, "Join the Lonely Hearts Correspondence Club and get lots of mail." So I sent a dime and a description of myself, and in return received a pamphlet from which to choose my correspondence.
That sounds interesting. I may have to resort to it myself if Winnie doesn't thaw out. Did you hear from many of them?
Winnie with a groan.
Did she?
I have had many highly entertaining and instructive communications, and have filled several notebooks with valuable information for future writings.
And then when she broke her wrist a month ago, I, like a fool, promised to keep up her correspondence for her.
She kept it up all right. Listen to this.
Opens one letter. Winnie sinks back with a groan.
To sweet little unseen Winnie.
What? Aha! Now I understand why it is that you refuse to name a date for our wedding.
Art, don't. It's terrible, but it isn't my fault.
I wrote to this gentleman about every week for a year and never received a salutation like that.
Reads.
To sweet little unseen Winnie, it was with gladsome joy that I lamped your pen tracks after the postman blew his whistle and beat it.
Oh.
Ha ha, and also tee-hee.
You hateful thing.
Margaret reads.
So it's back to the farm with the rest of the chickens, is it? I'll bet the gay old roosters at the village post office crowed with joy when you clucked into town. Show them some fancy stepping, won't you? Get this, Art.
Reads.
How is dear old sister's wrist? Tell her not to think of slinging ink in this direction until it is well and strong. Probably 6 months' rest would help it if you are going to keep on batting for her. She's all right, but she never would write me the cozy, loving letters you do, and that kind is what I had in mind when I sent my John Hancock to that Lonely Hearts affair. I would have quit her cold if she hadn't been able to talk politics, which same most women is gladly ignorant of, at least in my ward. Keep that under your bonnet, sister. I don't want to get in Dutch with her. Then comes the real news, Arthur.
I'm listening with both ears.
Margaret reads.
Little one, while I have been pushing this pen, a strong desire to see you personally has overcame me. It is so hot here in Chi that you can see Lake Michigan boil. Well, I ain't had a vacation since the Chicago police was straight, which is long, long ago. And politics is dead here until next month, so if they ever heard of Boulder, Vermont at the Illinois Central Station, so's they can tell me how to get there, I'll be along to pay my respects in person myself to my sweet little correspondent. And to help you give those green Vermonters a correct idea of what big city folks is like. Yours till the world goes dry, Pete McGlinchey, boss of the Bloody 19th.
Arthur bursts into roars of laughter.
Now you see what little sister has done.
Don't you dare laugh, either of you, or I'll never speak to you again.
Perhaps you won't condescend to when you're helping Pete run his tough Bloody 19th ward.
To Margaret.
Do you suppose that he will really come?
Listen to this.
Reads.
P.S. I shall just start a day behind this letter.
Then he will be here tomorrow afternoon. I wish that I could stay and meet the gentleman.
I am glad that you can't. This is Winifred's kettle of fish. She did the catching, and she is the one to do the cooking.
Winnie, what made you write such a billy-do?
I didn't dream that anything like this would come of it. I knew that Margaret had kept them giving their opinions on all sorts of abstract subjects, politics, economics, and that sort of thing.
And I had been getting some enlightening lines, I can tell you.
And I could read between the lines. They all felt romantic over corresponding with unknown women and wanted to wax ardent. But she wouldn't even swap photos, and she kept them going on capital and labor. Romantic, wasn't it? So I gave them a change. But I didn't dream that they would want to come here.
They? You mean him?
You have only heard half.
Holy smoke! Is more company expected?
Yes, Winnie has set another lonely heart aflutter.
Does it flutter so violently as Pete's?
Judge for yourself.
Read second letter.
Tonkawa, Texas, Monday.
What's the name of that metropolis?
Tonkawa. Doesn't it sound funny?
Like the name of a Pullman car. Or a new style of collar.
Proceed. Let's get the sickening thing read as long as you want Arthur to hear it.
She was undecided about having you know of these love affairs, but I considered it my painful duty to let you know all.
Arthur, trying to be very sober.
I feel terrible cut up over them.
Margaret reads.
Tonkawa.
Ha ha ha.
Oh, shut up.
Winnie.
I don't care. It's mean of you to make fun of me just because I tried to cheer up some lonely folks.
Yes, you did.
Reads.
Dear Miss Winnie.
That's real conservative.
It sure has been a breath of old New England which your letters have been blowing down this here way. It's funny, but your letters have made me want to write things to yo all that your sister didn't. By the way, how is her wrist? Tell her she must rest it careful like for a long time.
Another turn down for you, Margaret.
Margaret reads.
I have just sold a lot of cattle and made quite a cleanup. I've also got a good bit for leasing a piece of land to some New York men who want to sell oil stock up there. Well, I ain't much of a hand to write. It would be a heap sight easier to say things, so I've a big surprise for you. I'm aiming to pull out of here just a day behind this letter, so I reckon you all is smart enough to figure when to expect me in Boulder. Your faithful friend, Ed Roper.
Slips letter into envelope and lays it on table. Also removes her glasses and lays them on table.
Of all the situations I have ever heard of a human being getting into, this takes the cake. Winnie, you had better hire the fife and drum corps to go to that depot tomorrow for a grand reception. I bet that they will both arrive then.
I have a good mind to go back to the city with you tonight.
And leave me here to console the weary travelers? No, ma'am. You will stay right here and not disappoint those boys.
I know how we can fix it, Winnie. You can come back with me if this is used at the junction while we are waiting for the express.
He takes 2 folded papers from his pocket. One is very creased and worn.
Arthur Gray, are you still carrying those marriage licenses with you?
All the time, until one of them is used.
He regards them critically.
The Vermont one is still quite new, but the Massachusetts is pretty well creased. Got any mending tissue handy, Margaret?
You may be sure that I shall stay right here. There is no politician or cowboy or anyone else who can frighten me into marrying you before I get good and ready. And for every time you show me that, you will wait a while longer.
Arthur to Margaret.
Observe, our sister and fiancée in a tantrum. A very mild one, to be sure, yet it is a genuine tantrum.
Yes, I recognize it. What a terrifying sight it used to be. But one can become accustomed to anything.
Enter Myra, center.
Miss Margaret, someone wants to speak to you on the telephone.
Thank you, Myra. Don't you children come to blows while I am gone.
Exit center. Myra calling after her.
Say, Miss Margaret, you'd better yell, "Get off from that line," before you talk. I heard 2 or 3 listeners getting busy.
She stares at Arthur.
Heard you're going back to Boston this afternoon, Mr. Gray.
Yes, Myra.
Is it an awful long ride?
I shall get there about 6 o'clock in the morning.
Land of Goshen, be you gonna to ride all night?
Don't bother, Mr. Gray.
That's all right. I like to talk to Myra.
Oh, very well.
We are good friends, aren't we, Myra?
I guess we are if you say so, Mr. Gray. I've always thought so. Why didn't you take the morning train? Then you wouldn't have to sit up all night.
Oh, I shall get the express at the junction, and there is a sleeping car on that.
What's that?
A car with beds in it.
No, whoever heard the likes of that? A lot of beds right there in the car? Do men and women?
They change the seats into beds and make little rooms with curtains all around them.
Well, dear me, sus, I ain't never heard the likes.
Winnie is exceedingly bored, while Arthur is amused.
And they have a car that is just like a restaurant. Tables, waiters, and all.
Well, that explains it.
What?
Why you never take lunch when you go? Olga and me was wondering. You must have learned a heap traveling. I'm going to travel someday.
Why don't you start right now? Take a trip to the kitchen.
Yes, Miss Winnie. Say, Miss Winnie, that was a pretty extra special one, wasn't it?
Giggles.
What are you talking about?
Why, that there was special delivery, registered letter. The boy said that he hadn't had one that was both special and registered since he's been there.
Can it be possible?
Aw, be a sport, Winifred. Thaw out.
To Myra.
Must be great to get a letter like that.
Did you know it cost 22 cents to send it? An awful lot for one letter. There were 3 stamps on it. A special delivery, which was 10 cents. Then there was the one with the feller on the bicycle. And then a yellow 10-center for registered. And the regular 2-center. Some letter.
Myra, to the kitchen. Travel.
Myra, slowly moving toward Bright.
Yes, Miss Winnie. I wonder who wrote it. So does everybody at the post office. It came from Texas.
Exit Bright.
Looks like a busy time for you beginning tomorrow. The arrival of that letter will have plenty of publicity, and when the author and his rival get here tomorrow, there will be some excitement in the village.
Don't think about it.
Shall I stop at the mansion house and make reservations for them?
Please don't tease me anymore.
Arthur, glancing at watch.
No, I won't. It is time for me to start for the depot, or that one-lunged train will start back for the junction without me. I heard it whistle on the way up some time ago.
Enter Margaret, Center.
Our country coachman is waiting. He says that you had better start now, for the horse is getting old.
I'll be there before the noble beast ages another second.
I shall ride down with you and do some shopping. Wish your fond farewells. I'll be in the buggy.
Exit Center.
Goodbye, Winnie dear. I shall come up next weekend, but I won't be able to steal Monday off, too. This week was an exception.
They embrace.
Goodbye, Art, old dear. I'll be looking for you.
Pulls lapel of coat playfully.
And cheer up. We'll be married someday.
Someday and Hope On are becoming my favorite songs.
I'll go as far as the piazza and see you off. Don't let old Dobbin run away with you.
Exeunt Center. Enter Myra, right. Cautiously looks about. Myra goes to Center and listens.
My stars, I'm in luck.
Searches room, finally sees letter on table. With a joyous gasp.
I'm in double luck.
Gazes at letter dreamily, then slowly draws it from envelope.
Texas! Ed! Oh, I wish I was a lonely hearter so he'd write to me. Well, I have 'em secondhand anyway. Only the last two she put away where I couldn't find 'em.
Her lips move silently, as, with many sighs and ahs, she laboriously reads.
My stars and garters, my land of Goshen, Jim Willikins. Did I read that right?
Reads a moment.
He's coming. My cowboy Ed is coming.
With sudden realization.
To see Miss Winnie. Oh, but I'll see him. What beautiful letters he writes.
Regarding envelope.
22 cents.
Voices are heard off left.
Someone's coming.
Hastily puts letter down and makes a pretense of arranging the table. Enter Alice Carter at left.
Why, Myra, I thought you finished this room this morning.
Myra with a guilty look.
Things is always getting awry. Just thought I'd tidy up a bit.
Looks neat enough to me.
See, Miss Alice? Somebody left these letters here. Suppose I'd better take 'em upstairs and put 'em on Miss Winnie's dresser?
I'll take them. I'm going up.
Myra reluctantly surrenders them.
Say, I can't get over what an easy job you have. I wish I had a high-up job like you.
Perhaps you will someday.
Think so? Honest?
If you will learn to talk less and do more.
My land sakes, I guess I do more than you do now, and I don't want to be exactly dumb.
Alice amused.
No?
I should say not. Say, don't you do more work at the city house than you do here?
I look after Miss Margaret's clothes and I typewrite all her manuscripts.
Typewrite? How come?
Because I wish to get ahead.
How did you learn?
Went to night school on my evenings off when I was her maid.
She told me that you was her maid once, but now that you're a companion, she said, how long have you been with her?
4 years.
You must have been young when you went there.
I was 15. You see, I was an orphan.
Oh, we got some of them in town. They'd keep them at the poor farm. Did you ever live at the poor farm? Did you have to work hard?
Alice with a smile.
No to both questions. I had 2 years left in high school, and Miss Margaret made me finish.
Wasn't that worse than work?
Sometimes I thought so, but I am very happy to think that I finished.
That's funny. What good do you do? Ain't you always going to be a typewriting companion?
No. I am studying music. Someday I hope to teach it.
When?
I have 2 more years at the conservatory.
What's that?
The music school.
Why didn't you say so? Miss Brown here teaches swell, and she was only away at school 6 months. Well, I hope I get ahead in this world.
What is your idea of getting ahead?
Oh, marry some handsome cowboy or something like that.
What in the world put that queer notion into your head?
Myra, anxious to change the subject.
I don't know. Did you tell Olga what kind of pie to make tomorrow?
Yes, I did. Now please don't ask another question. And stand up straight. I do believe you are commencing to look just like a question mark.
Myra, nearly falling backward as she straightens up.
Honest, do you?
Enter Winnie, door at center.
I do hope that horse lives to get back. I couldn't figure out whether the shafts were to pull the buggy or hold up the horse. Oh, what a place to spend the summer. Why Margaret chose it, I can't see. There's nothing doing.
Nothing doing. How about mail coming in every day in the summer and 3 times a week in the winter, and moving pictures in town hall every Saturday, and a band concert on the 4th of July? My sakes, any more excitement and I'd have prostration of my nerves.
I was just going to take these letters upstairs.
With a significant glance toward Myra.
I thought probably you would rather have them put away than lying around.
Yes, I would.
You're in luck to have them.
What do you mean? I would be glad if I didn't.
I thought you heard. You know we had only a letter or 2 yesterday and a regular deluge today?
Yes.
Well, the special delivery boy said that it was because 2 sacks of mail fell out of the baggage car in some way yesterday, and the engineer just happened to see them lying beside the track on the way up today.
Do you suppose that these letters were in those sacks?
He said that the registered sack and the one from the Middle West were the ones. They shouldn't have piled them so near the door.
Then these letters are both a day late.
I guess they are.
Good heavens! Then they'll be here today. They must have come up on the train which will take Arthur back. They're in town now.
Paces wildly about. Myra stands with mouth open, trying to comprehend.
Winifred, what's the trouble?
Winnie, handing her the letters.
Read those. They are liable to be here any minute. What shall I do?
Myra, forgetting herself, with sudden understanding.
Oh, in town now? Coming here? Miss Winnie, do you mean to say that Ed Roper, in the flesh, will be coming here today?
Winnie, stopping short.
What do you know about Ed Roper?
Great snakes of Ireland, what have I done?
You have confessed that you've been reading my mail.
I didn't mean no harm by it, Miss Winnie. Honest, I didn't. But it was so interesting. My stars, it was romantic is what it was.
This is a mess. Both coming.
What shall I do? I can't face them.
You should have heeded Margaret and me when we warned you about writing as you did.
The milk is spilled. Margaret won't help me out. Can you? What am I to do?
Face the music. That's all I can see.
Wait, I see a possibility.
She takes Myra by the shoulders.
Myra, have you been reading the letters right along?
Most of them. You put 1 or 2 away before I could get at 'em.
Good. I'm glad you have read them.
What?
Then you will know as much about him as I do. You shall take my place. You shall be Winifred Bronson while Roper is here.
I don't understand, Miss Winnie.
Yes, you do. Go up to my room and get into some of my clothes. Quick, anything you find in the closet. That will be quicker than going to the bungalow for your own.
I'm scared stiff. What'll I say to him?
Let him do the talking.
I don't believe you can get away with it, Winifred.
I'll try it anyway.
Myra stands in a daze.
I'll go the whole hog, too, if country servants are as gossipy as city.
Whirls Myra around.
See here, does Olga know about Roper, too?
Oh, Miss Winnie, don't ask me.
You little fool, I hope she does.
Do you? She does all right.
Did you read the letters from Pete McGlinchey, too?
Myra, trembling.
I guess we read the letters from everybody. We argue over who's the grander, Pete or Ed. She sticks up for Pete, but he ain't half so grand as Ed.
Fine.
Rushes to right and calls.
Olga, come here.
Are you crazy? You can never put over anything like this.
Enter Olga Johnson at right, apron and arms covered with flour.
I've been making pies, Miss Winnie.
Never mind the pies. Pete is coming.
Olga, staring blankly at Myra.
Does he want a pie?
Myra to Olga.
They know.
Oh, my.
Smiles mechanically.
Listen to me. Take off that cap and apron.
Almost pulls them off Olga and throws them into a chair.
You go upstairs with Myra and get into some of my clothes. I want you to tell Pete that you are Winifred Bronson. Pete is coming. You are Winnie.
I've been Olga Johnson.
Explain it to her, Myra, while you're getting dressed. And hurry.
To Olga.
You are going to be me.
That been good joke?
My sakes, what kind of crazy asylum would this place be with 3 Miss Winnies running around?
Never mind. You keep Ed away from Olga and Pete and see that she keeps Pete away from Ed. The chief thing is to keep the 2 men apart. Now get.
They stand holding hands and swinging them. Myra with a stupid look and Olga with her habitual grin.
Get!
Come along, Olga.
I've been coming.
Exit Myra and Olga at center.
What will Margaret say?
I don't care. She left me to get out of this scrape, and I'll choose my own exit.
Is it an exit, or are you merely digging in deeper?
I have it all figured out. When those men have spent an uncomfortable half hour with those fair maidens upstairs, they will be ready to depart at once for Chicago and Tonkawa, respectively, sadly disillusioned with wilted romances. They will sigh and say, "They all right well when they're far away," and I shall be neatly led out of an uncomfortable situation.
I hope that you are, but I hardly think that it will work so smoothly.
Suddenly.
How about Margaret? We shall have to warn her, or she will give the whole thing away.
I shall go down through the pasture and meet her. Then I shall go over to call on old Mrs. Brown and stay there until you phone me that Romeo and Lancelot have returned to the mansion house in disgust.
Very well.
Now you go upstairs and see if they are getting dressed. Give them instructions all over and tell them they'll be boiled in oil if they give this thing away.
I'll do my best to coach them, but one head is too thick to comprehend anything and the other is empty.
Exit center. Winnie sitting and fanning herself.
That's what I call generalship. I almost wish that I hadn't been so mean to Art. Why weren't we married years ago?
Bell rings off stage.
Good heavens, there's one of them.
Runs to center and calls in a loud whisper.
Alice! Alice! The door! Go to it!
Can't. They're only half dressed. I've got to hook them up.
I can't face them.
Bell rings violently.
What shall I do? I'll have to go.
Sees Olga's cap and apron and hurriedly gets into them.
Margaret's glasses.
Grabs them from table and puts them on. Finally, she rushes to the fireplace and blackens her hands on the charred logs, then wipes one hand over her face. Goes to answer the bell. Exit center. Valentine off stage.
Is this where the Mrs. Bronson reside?
Yes, won't you come in?
Thank you.
Re-enter Winnie center, followed by Valentine Romaine. Winnie is obviously relieved that he is not one of those she expected. They look each other up and down, the glasses giving each an owlish appearance. Valentine, speaking in a low, somber voice.
My heavens, girl, do the Mrs. Bronson know you look like that?
I am making pies.
Perchance that is blackberry stain on your hands and face.
Yes. Whom do you wish to see?
Miss Winifred.
Do you wish to sell her something? Are you a book agent?
You may inform her that Mr. Valentine Romaine is calling.
Winnie, stunned by the announcement, almost unable to speak.
Valentine Romaine?
The same. The rising young artist. Miss Winifred and I have had considerable correspondence due to the fact that her sister is a member of the Lonely Hearts Correspondence Club. Will you kindly advise her of my presence?"
But is she expecting you?"
"No, but from the ardent tone of her letters, she ought to be overcome with joy at my presence in Boulder."
"She will be overcome, all right."
I'm coming now. I told them to wait until they are called.
Winnie is seized with an inspiration at the sound of Alice's voice, runs to center. To Valentine.
"Here she comes."
Enter Alice center. Winnie instantly drags her to Valentine. Speaks intensely to Alice, pleading with her eyes and the tone of her voice that Alice play the part.
"Miss Winnie, this is Mr. Valentine Romaine. You know, the gentleman with whom you have been corresponding."
Mr. Romaine.
Valentine, bowing low.
"Come to pay his respects in person, Miss Winifred."
As he bows, Winnie pleads to Alice with a whispered please. Alice, with a twinkle in her eye, nods assent, and Winnie flees to left. Exit Winnie. Alice, trying to conceal her mirth.
This is indeed a surprise, Mr. Romaine.
Valentine, his eyes blinking with emotion.
"Have you forgotten that it was to be Val and Winnie when we met? I have not."
With a wan smile.
"I cannot forget that the last letter commenced, 'Dearest Val.'"
I must read your letters again.
"Why, have you so soon forgotten?"
No. They mean so much to me.
"Ah, what bliss to hear those words of your pen now come from your lips."
The bell rings. Alice jumps, starts to go, then hesitates.
"No, don't go. Let that peculiar servant of yours answer it."
Enter Winnie at left. Alice to Winnie.
Alice, please go to the door.
Winnie, in a whisper as she passes.
"Get him out of here quick."
Exit at center.
Oh, Val, let's go down to the cellar.
"Oh, what?"
There are some of the cutest little kittens down there. They are...
Hurries him toward left. Exit Alice and Valentine. Enter Winnie at center, followed by Pete McGlinchey. Pete, looking around with an appraising glance.
"I thought I had reached the jumping-off place when the train staggered into the depot here, but it was some short of this. Guess I've walked 2 miles. Only public hack in town was higher 10 seconds ahead of me."
Winnie, gazing at him in fright.
"You want to see Miss Winnie now, Mr. McGlinchey?"
"Exactly. That is the why of my trekking up here from Chicago."
"I'll call her."
Exit at center, looking doubtfully at him.
"Now I'll see the little dame who's been writing them sweet sentiments. Hooray for the lonely hearts."
He gazes expectantly at the door. Enter Winnie at center.
"Here comes Miss Winifred, sir."
Enter Olga at center. She is arrayed in a beautiful evening gown into which she was barely able to squeeze, and wears stout hiking boots. Her arms are still covered with flour, and the same ineradicable smile is on the red, shining countenance. Winnie is dazed.
"Miss Winnie, meet Mr. McGlinchey."
Olga and Pete gaze at each other, embarrassed, then shyly shake hands. Winnie exits at left.
"Been pleased to meet ya, Pete."
"Suffering cats, you're some queen, Winnie. I'm glad I spent the car fare to come. Honest I am."
"You look grand yourself, Pete."
They stand gazing at each other, speechless. Then they both begin to laugh nervously. Bell rings.
"Well, Winnie, let's start to get acquainted. Now I don't..."
Enter Winnie at left.
"Olga, there been someone at the door."
Winnie, in a whisper to Olga.
"Get him out of here quick."
Exit center. Olga thinks a minute with mouth open. Then the smile returns.
Pete, let's go to the hen house.
Where?
Want to show ya little chickens.
Just as you say, but you'll suit me fine as chickens go.
Exeunt at left. Enter Winnie at center, followed by Ed Roper. Winnie looks up at him with fear.
Well, little girl, I'm powerful glad to be here. Will you all tell Miss Winnie Ed Roper from Tonkawa is here to call?
Sit down, Mr. Roper, while I call her.
Exit at center.
Home-like little town.
He gazes around.
Home-like little home.
Re-enter Winnie.
She's coming right down, sir.
I hope she don't hurry herself. I can wait.
Enter Myra at center. She wears a modish knicker suit, also white silk stockings and high-heeled black satin pumps, in which she painfully hobbles about. Winnie can hardly speak.
Miss Winnie, this is Mr. Roper.
Ed, my sakes alive and stars and garters. You look just like you did in that snapshot you sent up here.
I'm powerful glad to see you all, Miss Winnie. Yes, I reckon you all wouldn't recognize me in the city clothes. I didn't know myself. So after I hired a bunk at the hotel, I got into my everyday outfit.
You look grand, just grand. Same as the moving picture fellas, gun and all.
I was stared at something shameful in the village, but I'm comfortable and looks can't kill me. It sure seems good to see you all, after the nice things Yoletta said.
I didn't never expect to see you.
I never expected to be in these parts when your sister was writing. But when you all began, well, your letters was so cordial-like that I just couldn't help coming.
Looks at her admiringly.
And when I looks at you all, Winnie, I just can't help being glad that I'm here in Boulder.
Land's sakes, I guess maybe I ain't.
Winnie has strolled over and stands looking out the window. Suddenly she starts, turns, and signals wildly to Myra, behind Ed's back. Ed, unbuckling belt.
I reckon I'll take off the artillery. It's a heap sight heavier to tote when you ain't on a horse.
Crosses to put belt on table, and Winnie hurries to Myra.
Get him out quick. They're coming back.
Ed, let's you and me take a little walk.
Sure thing.
Come up to the barn and see the little pigs.
I figure there's more hogs in my backyard than in this here whole state.
Drags him toward left. Exit Myra and Ed.
Oh, what a mess I'm in.
Enter Alice at center, followed at a little distance by Valentine. Alice, aside to Winnie.
Had to come in. Olga and her man are getting near us.
To Valentine.
Come right in, Val, and sit down.
As he sits, she glances out of window.
Here comes Margaret up the steps.
Winnie starts to run, then stops and anxiously watches door. Enter Margaret at center. Margaret, seeing Winnie.
For goodness sake.
Miss Margaret, Miss Winnie wants you to meet her friend, Mr. Valentine Romaine.
Yes, sister.
What?
Alice, to Winnie, trying to make Margaret grasp the situation.
That will do, Alice. You may go.
Winnie goes to window.
I didn't know that Mr. Romaine was coming to town.
It was quite unknown to Miss Winnie, but long contemplated on my part.
Winnie has again looked out the window and wildly motions Alice to go. Alice catches the silently formed words, "Get out."
We shall see you later, sister. Come, Val, I want to show you the little chickens.
Exit at left, Valentine soberly following.
What kind of bedlam is this? You, Alice?
No, call me Olga now.
Enter Olga and Pete at center. Olga to Winnie with a warning look at Margaret.
Olga, someone going to the barn? We came here to be alone.
Yes, Miss Winnie.
Sister Margaret, this been Mr. Pete McGlinchey.
Well, well, after all our letters at last we meet.
Yes, I came to see your sister.
He puts out a hand.
Pleased to meet you. Some sister. I'll say you've got some sister, Miss Margaret.
Winnie, from beside the window, issues another move on signal, and Olga nods vigorously.
You can see her later, Pete. Come on and see the little pigs.
She quickly and vigorously draws Pete to left. Exit Olga and Pete.
Oh, Winnie, Alice, Olga, what a farce!
No, call me Myra now.
Enter Myra and Ed at center. Winnie almost exhausted.
Did you see the pigs so quickly?
No, Myra. Somebody was near the hen house, and we wanted to be alone.
To Margaret.
Sister, did you meet Ed? Ain't he just grand?
I am glad to see you, Mr. Roper. You look just like your picture.
Yes, ma'am. Was wearing the same face when it was took.
Winnie, hardly able to stand.
Miss Winnie, please take Mr. Roper to see the kittens.
I'm glad to take him anywhere.
Dragging him left.
And I'm glad to go.
Exeunt.
Winnie, Alice, Olga, Myra, how are you going to fix this thing up?
Winnie, about all in.
I don't know.
The whole town is talking about the 3 strangers who have registered at the mansion house for 2 weeks and who all asked where you live.
2 weeks? Good night.
She falls in a faint. Curtain. End of Act 1. Act 2 of Breaking Winnie, a comedy in 3 acts by Carl Webster Pierce. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Act 2. Scene, same as Act 1. The following Saturday. Enter Winnie, center. Winnie goes to right and calls.
Olga! Olga!
Olga, off stage.
Yes, Miss Winnie, I've been coming.
Entered right, wearing her cap, apron, and smile.
I've been here.
Why do you always grin like a full moon? Can't you make your face behave?
I must smile when Pete been here.
Then get ready for a good long one. He is due any time now.
That been fine.
I don't think it been so. Can't you get him to stay away one day? He hasn't missed a day yet.
He want to be here all that time.
And so I have to be. I wish I could have a day's vacation. Give me the cap and apron, Olga.
Olga takes them off and Winnie dons them during the next few lines.
I think this been fun.
I can't agree with you.
He can't make pies when Pete make love.
Making love, is he? I'm glad his trip hasn't been entirely wasted.
I wish he'd stay more than 2 weeks.
I don't. Does he ever suspect that you are not Winnie?
My, no.
Pointing at Winnie.
And he thinks that Olga been funny girl.
Perhaps I look funny, but I don't feel so.
I been sorry, but I have a lovely time.
Run along now and get dressed before Pete arrives.
Yes, I will hustle.
Exit at center. Winnie sighs wearily and goes to mirror to adjust cap. Enter Margaret, center.
Hello. Why are you climbing into your costume so early?
Because that fool politician from Chicago is coming.
We shall soon lose a very good cook, I fear.
You may lose a perfectly good sister, too. I don't know how I shall drag through the rest of these 2 weeks.
I hope that the remainder of the time will be as exciting as the past. So far, the plot for my next book is minutely laid out, with you as its heroine.
It may look like a farce to you, but I'm in desperate circumstances. Those 3 fellows all want to be here at the same time, and that is all the time. I can't hardly remember whether I'm Olga or Alice or Myra, to say nothing of keeping the dear boys from meeting. Oh, how I wish I had married Arthur long ago.
Really?
Don't you dare tell him. I intend to make him wait until next summer.
Must I make this a continued story?
Yes.
Bell rings.
There's the start of a new chapter. Go welcome Pete.
Winnie runs to window and looks out.
Oh, heavens, it's Valentine. He's always showing up unexpectedly. You'll have to help get him out of the way before Pete arrives.
Leave him with me while you go after Alice. Tell her to get him out. She manages him wonderfully.
Winnie exits center. Re-enter Winnie, followed by Valentine.
Mr. Romaine, ma'am.
Alice, be a good girl and tell Miss Winnie I am here.
Very well, sir.
Exit at center.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Romaine.
This is indeed fortunate.
Yes?
Finding you alone, I mean. I have been considering asking Miss Winnie something. I'd like your advice.
If that is all you wish, I assure you it will be freely given.
I suppose that I should ask your permission to ask her anyway.
Winifred has never felt that anyone need be consulted concerning her.
So I should think. She seems a very resourceful, level-headed young lady.
Winnie, resourceful, level-headed? Perhaps the Winnie you know is, but the Winnie I know is just the opposite.
The letter writer must not be judged by her letters, I admit.
Winnie will be right down. What is it you wish to ask me?
I wish to ask if you think I would be too precipitate if I were to ask Winnie today if she will marry me.
5 days is rather short acquaintance, don't you think?
Perhaps. But then remember how long we were corresponding. Almost a year I was writing to you, and then to her, about 3 times a week for a month.
You remarked something about that correspondence. Do you feel that you know her very well from her letters?
Frankly, I don't. Don't ever tell her. But from her letters I thought she was about the most foolish, irresponsible, silly young thing that exists.
Is that so?
I came up here out of curiosity to see what she was like, and I find a most charming, quiet, unassuming lady, and her intelligence is far above what I expected. I think it is only fair to tell you this. I regret that I did her such an injustice as thinking the thoughts I did.
So you think you can support a wife? Would you live in a garret in Washington Square and eat crusts?
Oh, Miss Bronson, I fear you jest. I am destined to become a great artist. It is in my soul. I have the instinct.
And, Winnie would have the instinct to eat 3 times a day.
Valentine, looking around.
It would never do for my fellow artists to know it, but I am cramping my soul for the greater part of the day as a bank clerk, I'm ashamed to admit. Until I am recognized as a great artist, we could live comfortably on my bank money.
Well, take a chance and ask her. Why not go for a walk in the upper pasture? That is a romantic spot in which to put so momentous a question.
I shall. Wish me luck.
He draws a paper from his pocket.
I have the license. I hope that she will say yes, so the next week may be a honeymoon week before we return to the soul-crushing city.
Margaret, reading the license.
Winifred Bronson and Valentine Romaine.
Enter Alice at center. She is frankly very pleased to see Valentine, and runs eagerly forward, both hands outstretched. He hastily puts the license in his pocket.
Val, you didn't come at all this morning.
I'm sorry. It's the first morning that I've missed, but I had some business letters to write.
Business? What has a true artist to do with business?
Alas, do not scoff, Winifred. There are times when one must, for a good reason, sink to a common level.
Silly. I was only playing. If you had a little common sense mixed with your artistic sense, you would have known it.
I'm afraid that I must let you have the common sense for both of us.
Gives Margaret a significant look.
Come on for a walk.
Fine. I was going to suggest it.
Enter Winnie, center.
Good luck.
Exeunt Valentine and Alice at left.
Good luck, nothing. What did he have to come here for now? I like to be just one person at a time and not have to keep dancing around like a jumping jack.
Winnie, things are getting serious.
Are you really waking up to the fact? I have known it for a long time.
I'm not talking about you. I mean that Val has a marriage license in his pocket and your name is on it.
Then he must intend to ask Alice to marry him.
So he told me.
If she dares to give me away, I'll kill her, or myself, or someone.
What can you expect her to do in a fix like that?
Get her to put him off like I have Arthur. I've done it for 3 years. I guess that she can stall until I get out of this part of the country.
I wouldn't ask anyone to treat a human being as you have treated Arthur. He has the patience of Job, or he would have been through with you a long time ago.
When there is danger of losing him, I'll change my tactics.
Why haven't you gone to the train to meet him?
It would please him if I did. Since I didn't, he'll have something to complain about.
I wish that he would try some caveman stuff on you.
I wouldn't stand for it.
You might not be able to help yourself.
I'd just like to see him try it. Oh, wouldn't I?
Arthur has been too good, too kind to you. The nicer he is to you, the meaner you are to him. You have the most willful, most downright cussed nature I've ever known.
Winnie, with a toss of her head.
Put that in your next book. It's a good speech.
How are you going to get along with Art while all these visitors are calling on your other selves?
That, dear sister, is nicely arranged. They have already been told that he is coming to see you, that he comes up every weekend to see you. So when he comes, you post him on when to call me Alice and Olga and Myra, and tell him that when the lonely hearters are all away, if they ever are, I'll try to spare him a minute.
You're not worth his spending car fare to come up here.
Bell rings.
I'll answer you later. The bell now.
She goes to the door at center and comes back followed by Pete.
Olga, you know who I came to see?
Yes, sir.
Afternoon, Miss Margaret.
I'll get her at once.
I am going upstairs to take a nap. I will send her down.
Very well, Miss Margaret.
Exit Margaret at center.
Well, Olga, I won't be bothering you much longer.
Is that so? Are you leaving town?
Pete, taking a paper from his pocket.
Just glance at that.
A marriage license. Winifred Bronson and Peter McGlinchey. Have you asked her yet?
Winnie lays license unfolded on the table.
That's my idea of calling this afternoon. If I have as much influence around her as I have in the bloody 19th, we'll be hitched by sunset and get out of the woods tomorrow.
Enter Olga center, clad in a gorgeous afternoon dress of her own.
Petey, I been coming.
Well, I'm glad to see you.
And I been glad to see ya, Petey. I think you're never coming. It been so late.
Hurried as fast as I could. Couldn't get here any earlier.
I'm glad.
Pete with a scowl.
What's that?
I'm glad you're here now. Miss Winnie has been so impatient to see you.
No kiddin', has she?
Now, Olga, don't ya give my secrets out.
How'd you like to see the city, Winnie, where they have taxis instead of cows, and where the only sidewalks ain't in front of the town hall?
I ain't a country girl, Pete. I cooked in Mr. Automat's restaurant in Boston 2 years.
That so? Did they pay you with nickels? Well, Winnie, I've got something important, mighty important to ask you.
Oh, ya mak me lose my breath.
Out in Chai they call me the thundering orator of the West Side. I hope the speech makes a hit with you.
Strikes an imposing attitude.
Fellow citizens, I stand here before your intelligent countenance.
Olga with a simple look.
Oh, Petey, ye been just grand.
Mr. McGlinchey, Miss Margaret's friend may be here any time now. Perhaps you will have more privacy for your speech up in the orchard.
I forgot you were here. Thanks for the suggestion. I'm more used to talking in the open air.
Olga proudly takes his proffered arm, going left. Bell rings. Exit Pete and Olga at left.
Just in time. I'll have St. Vitus dance if I have to jump around here much longer. I guess that's art. It's time for him.
Bell rings again.
Ring out, Wild Bell. I wonder if the ringer will be wild if it isn't answered. Guess I'll find out.
Looks at the marriage license on table.
Heavens, I wonder what they think of me at the town hall. 3 marriage licenses out now with my name on them.
Bell rings. She sits in chair back to door at center.
I wonder how long he will wait before he walks in.
After a moment, a door slams. Winnie laughs. Ed appears at center. She hears his step and speaks without turning.
Well, sweetie, did him find his way in all by his lonesome? Tom, give me a kiss.
Enter Ed.
Well, if you all don't sound just like one of them Mexican camp followers.
In a stern voice, but with a twinkle in his eye.
Myra, I've a good mind to give you all a hiding. Naughty girl.
Winnie jumps up and stares at him, trying to speak.
Oh, you see, I'm sorry.
Exits quickly, right. Ed laughs good-naturedly, seats himself on the edge of the table, and takes a paper from his pocket.
It sure has been a profitable trip for me if this yar thing gets signed up proper.
He daydreams a moment, then sighs and reads.
Winifred Bronson and Ed Roper.
Enter Myra, right. She wears long skirt, shirtwaist, etc.
Ed!
Hello, little orange blossom.
Myra with a giggle.
Oh, Ed, I heard your voice and I just flew down them stairs.
I'm powerful glad for to hear that. Say, do you think that you all could fly further than that?
What does you mean?
Ed, nervously crushing his hat.
Well, do you all reckon your wings would be able to carry you a long way from Boulder?
Myra, sawing around on one foot.
For instance, where to?
Well, for instance, say, Tonkawa.
Ed.
She looked earnestly at him.
Do you mean it?
It was a powerful long journey up here alone, and it's terrible lonesome on the ranch without someone you love waiting for you after you've been riding horseback all day.
Oh.
Closes her eyes in ecstasy. Then a sudden fear comes over her.
Ed.
What is it? Why do you all sound so queer?
Ed, do I seem as good to you as I did in my letters?
Do you all know that there's something queer about those letters?
I know, I was scared so.
I thought that I was a-comin' to find a flighty, foolish, wild gal that needed powerful bad to be broke to the halter. I figured it would be necessary to kinder rope you all and tend you some, but I was wrong, dead wrong. Forgive me for ever thinking those things about you.
My sakes, don't mention it.
Winnie, I love you all. Will you come back to Tonkawa as my wife?
Ed, supposing that I hadn't told you something terrible about me.
I ain't asking no questions about your past, no matter how terrible it's been. I'm only asking, will you all marry me?
Half to herself.
I'd travel, and I'd have a home of my own and a chance to learn things, and I do love you, Ed. I'll do it. I'll go. I don't care what they say.
Weeps with joy. They embrace awkwardly.
That's fine. We'll head for the parson this very minute. Come along.
Exit Ed and Myra at left. Enter Arthur, center, carefree and whistling. He carries a suitcase. Looks around, then goes to right, center, and left, whistling a call and listening at each door.
Well, this seems to be the deserted village. Why didn't that little vixen have the decency to stay at home if she didn't meet me at the train?
Goes to window and looks out.
They must be berrying or out for a hike.
Goes to table and looks over several books and magazines.
I wonder how the little crazy head succeeded in getting rid of her lonely hearters. Of all the silly little fools I know, she is the worst. And I'm in love with her. I'll tame her yet.
Carelessly takes up the license Pete left on the table. Suddenly his eyes are riveted to it.
By the gods! A marriage license! Peter McGlinchey! Why didn't I stay last Monday? The heartless little devil. After 3 years I'm canned. Going to marry a man she flirted with by mail and has seen only 5 days.
Throws down the license.
I'm through with her. I'll give her one good tongue lashing and then never see her again.
Paces in anguish.
My God, what shall I do? A creature so heartless as that, and yet I love her. What mockery! What a fate! I could kill her!
Winnie's merry laugh is heard off to the left. Arthur goes to the window and stands as though stunned. Enter Winnie and Pete at left.
You careless old lover. You are so flustered you don't know your name. I'm sure that we left it here.
It's very necessary. We can't go through the plans without it.
Winnie, seeing Arthur.
Good afternoon, Mr. Gray. When did you come in? Shall I call Miss Margaret?
No thanks.
Pete, carelessly pointing with a turn of the wrist.
This is the regular weekend bird?
Yes, Mr. McGlinchey. I am the faithful weekender. Any objection? This is Mr. McGlinchey.
Sure thing. Thunder and Pete of the Bloody 19.
Here's the little paper.
Pete, taking the license from her.
Oh, happy day. I didn't hope for such luck when I got it. It was easier than stuffing the ballot box.
To Arthur.
Going to get married.
To Winnie.
I'll wait for my blushing bride on the front steps.
All right.
Exit Pete at center.
Well, Arthur, why do you linger yonder?
You should be glad that I do.
Perhaps I am.
Haven't you the least bit of compassion for me, Winnie?
Can't say that I have.
You have the nerve to stand there and laugh at my suffering. What a heartless little she-devil you are.
Isn't that a little strong, Arthur Gray? I don't have to stand for it.
Bah! You cringe under one little statement which is true. What do you think is left of my feelings? Haven't you the decency to at least feel sorry for me after all these years?
Sorry? Go stick your head under the pump, old fellow. You look hot.
Haven't you an ounce of self-respect, an iota of fair play in your makeup? How I have hoped and prayed that you would settle to earth and be worth something as a human being. But you haven't, and you have no right to make me suffer as I have.
Winnie, commencing to realize he is in earnest.
Arthur!
You've played me for 3 years. The first year was interesting. The second, it became monotonous. And the last, it has been hell.
Grasps her by the shoulders.
Do you realize that you have stolen 3 years of my life, 3 of the very best, and that they can never be replaced? You thief! You common thief!
Arthur, I didn't mean anything.
That's just it. You didn't mean anything, and I meant everything. I gave you all my love. I bared my soul to you, expecting every moment that yours would be revealed. But now I find that you have none. You are a beautiful mold, but you are as empty as a china doll.
Winnie, trembling, on the verge of tears.
Let me go, Arthur. Let me go.
Arthur drops his arms listlessly.
You have been just about as mean to me as was possible, and now at last you disregard me altogether.
What do you mean?
Why didn't you telegraph me how things stand between you and Pete? You could at least have spared me the humiliation of coming to my own funeral.
Arthur!
You acted as if I was a total stranger just now when you came in with that big hulk of a man.
But Art, I couldn't let him know that
I was a cast-off lover. Of course you couldn't. I hope that you'll be happy with him. But let me warn you that he won't stand you 3 years, or even 3 months.
What are you talking about?
Don't try to fool me, I know. I saw that license on the table with your name on it. Use it.
Points out window.
Go. Your correspondence club Romeo awaits you. What an unlucky man he is, if he but knew it. Perhaps he will break you, though. I hope he beats you and starves you and breaks you. Physical suffering is the only thing you can comprehend.
Winnie, forgetting her tears, her temper raging.
Look here, Arthur Gray. You have said just about enough to last you for a century. Now stop it. Get out. Get out and leave me alone. I'm glad for every minute I've made you suffer. I enjoy seeing you writhe now. It makes me pay less attention to your words.
He takes up his hat and suitcase. She taunts him.
Now the little boy is mad and won't play with me anymore. Going home? Won't you ever come over in my yard again?
He stands motionless.
I'll have to find someone else to play with. And we have had such good times.
Arthur, dropping hat and suitcase.
Yes, we have had good times.
Steps toward her.
And you are not going to find anyone else.
Winnie, frightened, backing away.
What do you mean?
I mean that it drives me mad to stand here and think of you with anyone else. I mean that I'm going to teach you a lesson which you will never forget. I mean that you will never use the license I saw on that table. Never?
He snatches the table cover off. She screams.
Never.
He throws it over her.
Never.
He lifts her, struggling in his arms. Muffled screams of rage and fear are heard. Enter Margaret at center, hurriedly.
What is the trouble? Arthur, what are you doing?
Taking revenge for the suffering this little fool has inflicted upon me.
Starts for center with screaming, struggling Winnie in his arms. Quick curtain. End of Act 2. Act 3 of Breaking Winnie, a comedy in 3 acts by Carl Webster Pierce. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Act 3. Scene. Study in the home of Reverend Mr. Darling. Entrances are right by a door from the garden, center by a double doorway with practicable doors. Up left is a closet with door. Below door at right is a window. Between window and door at right is hat tree. In upper right corner is a large Japanese screen. A flat-topped desk set on the diagonal, left of center. On it is a glass of water, numerous books, and scattered paper. Bookcases line the walls, and there are several chairs. Discovered. Reverend Darling at desk writing. He lays down his pen.
Dear me, how the time does fly. I scarcely get one sermon delivered before it's time for the next.
Arranges notes in 2 piles.
There's the evening sermon, and here's the morning. Now let me see how the opening paragraphs sound.
Rises, takes a sip of water, clears his throat, thrusts one hand beneath his coat tails and the other between the buttons of his coat.
Brothers and sisters, the text upon which I shall base my talk this morning is found in the 7th chapter of Matthew. Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened.
Knock is heard at door at right. Reverend Darling starts, then smiles blandly.
Well, it shall.
Opens door.
Good afternoon. Won't you step in?
Enter Valentine and Alice.
Good afternoon. Have you a few minutes to spare?
For what purpose? I can usually spare the time when anyone needs me.
I think you will agree that we need you now.
I shall be glad to be of service. My duties to my fellow men run through their lives from beginning to end. Christenings, weddings, funerals, in the order named, are 3 of the big events I supervise, and I am ready to help in any other way I can.
Well, sir, it isn't a christening we want. You see, we're
not married.
I mean, we're way past the christening age. That was attended 2 years ago.
You don't look like a dead one, so then it must be the 2nd of the big events I mentioned.
Yes, that's it.
You young people wish to be married.
Yes.
Married.
Mops his brow.
There, I said it.
Almost as hard to tell me as it was to tell the town clerk when you got the license, isn't it?
Yes, sir. You see, this is all new to me. I've never been married before.
Has the young lady? She stands it pretty well.
No, of course she hasn't.
Brace up, Val. We won't ever have to be again.
I'm glad of that.
Wipes his forehead with handkerchief.
Just how do we proceed, Mr. Darling? I was told these constitute the necessary articles.
Takes out the license and fishes in pockets for the ring. A blank expression comes over his face.
Where's the ring, Val?
Valentine, feverishly exploring his pockets.
I put it right here.
Take your time, young man. I'm used to it. At least 25% of the rings have to be traced through several pockets. It isn't lost. Make a systematic search.
Finally locating the ring.
There.
Just as I said. Now, you keep it in sight while I glance over the license.
Takes it and reads the names.
Winifred Bronson. Oh, yes, sister of Margaret Bronson, the writer, I presume. You see, being here only in the summer myself, I don't get acquainted with everyone.
Peruses license.
Val, I want to tell you that...
There. Don't you give way. I'm depending on you for moral support. I've almost got my nerve back again. Don't lose yours at the last minute.
Holding his hat awkwardly in one hand and the ring between the thumb and forefinger of the other. Reverend Darling placing license on desk.
You have filled out everything correctly. You didn't bring anyone with you?
Valentine, standing rigidly.
No, oh no. We preferred a quiet affair.
Don't stand there like a tailor's dummy. Give me your hat.
Takes it and starts for the hat tree.
It will be necessary to have a witness. I will call my wife. She is used to such occasions as this and is a very quiet person, so it will still be a quiet affair.
Starts up center. Alice gives a little gasp and stares out of window.
What is it, my dear?
Someone is coming up the walk. Someone whom I know.
Reverend Darling, beaming.
Isn't that nice? Now you won't need my wife. Your friend can be witness.
No. Mr. Darling, these people must not see us. Can't we wait somewhere until there is no one here? Please, attend to them first.
Very well.
Points up center.
Sit out there, and I will close the door.
Knock is heard at right. Alice, hurrying Valentine, who seems stupefied.
Come on, quick!
Valentine holds ring gingerly before him and follows Alice to center. Exit Alice and Valentine. Reverend Darling closes door at center and crosses to door at right. As he opens the door, Myra's irrepressible giggle is heard.
Good afternoon.
Ed, off stage.
Is this Parson Darling?
It is. Won't you step in?
Enter Myra and Ed.
I reckon the job we want done calls for a sky pilot.
Why, Ed, you said we was going on a train. You didn't say nothing about risking our necks in an airship.
I beg pardon, both from the reverend gentleman and my little bride.
Myra giggles furiously.
Down on the ranch, we call the circuit riders sky pilots.
That ain't sense.
I understand. Let me see your license.
What?
The marriage license.
Well now, how did you all know that is what we come for?
Am I correct?
I guess you are all right. Goodness, I didn't ever dream I'd be getting married so soon.
Can't always tell, can you, Parson? As the good book says, in the midst of life we are in death.
Is it very hard to do? I mean, getting yoked up, does it take long?
She's the original question box, Parson. Reckon she'd beat Thomas Edison in a question-putting contest.
It is very simple and only takes about 2 minutes.
Most like being hung, ain't it? All over 'fore it's hardly started.
It's about as hard to get undone, too, as hanging would be.
I trust that it will be a permanent affair.
So do I. Oh, I'm getting scared.
It's been done afore, and people has lived after it. So take a deep breath so's you all can say your I do's and I will's right pert smart, Winnie.
Winnie!
Winnie? Is your name Winnie?
Sure is. Sweet name, ain't it?
What a coincidence! The last young lady who came here to be married is named Winifred.
Glances cautiously at door at center.
Say, Mr. Darling, if the feller to the town hall made a mistake and put the wrong name on the paper, would we be married just the same?
My dear young lady, that is the last fear in the world with which you need concern yourself.
I should say so.
You may be sure that Mr.
He starts to open the license to see the name, but Myra speaks.
Roper, sir.
That
Mr. Roper gave the information correctly, and then the clerk read it to him just to be sure.
But supposing the name was all wrong.
Then I am afraid that it would not be a legal marriage.
Oh.
Wanders dejectedly to window.
I haven't lost my nerve yet, Parson, and I reckon she'll get a hold of herself presently.
Without doubt, this is a reversal of the usual course, As a rule, the ladies are in full command of their nervous systems and the men are nearly total wrecks.
Is that so?
Now, if I may see the license, please.
Ed takes it from pocket and hands it over. Myra distractedly toys with the cord of the window shade and is excited with fear each time Reverend Darling starts to inspect license.
Here it is, all in fine shape.
Reverend Darling starts to open it, then stops to speak.
Funny how the little girl took a notion that it might be made out incorrectly.
No chance in the world that it ain't right.
Reverend Darling again starts to read, but delays.
Well, you know how women are.
Yes, I knows how they are.
Reverend Darling adjusts spectacles. Same business with license.
Oh, you folks are alone? Why didn't you bring someone with you as a witness?
We thought we might keep it hushed up a spell.
Mrs. Darling will be glad to act as a witness. I will call her as soon as I look over the license.
Business.
Do we have to have a witness?
Yes, it is required by law.
We don't mind the parson's wife, Winnie dear. She's used to things like this. Sort of a regular first-class assistant, I take it.
Exactly. Now, let me see whom I am about to marry. The young lady is familiar by sight, but being here only in the summer, I haven't learned all the names.
At last he opens the license. With a gasp, Myra turns abruptly and gazes out of the window. As Reverend Darling reads, a look of astonishment comes over his face.
Dear me, what a peculiar coincidence! How strange!
Compares the license with the one on desk.
What an extraordinary circumstance!
Myra, excitedly pointing out of window.
Jumpin' Jupiter, here comes someone I know.
Well, that's all right. If it's a friend, you just tell him to keep a secret and let us do the advertising of this here event on our own way. I don't know why you all is so set on keeping it hushed. I'd like to tell the world.
We mustn't let them see us. Hide us somewhere, Parson Darling, and we'll get married after they're gone.
What peculiar goings-on this afternoon!
We must get out of sight. Can't we go in here?
Dashes for door at center. Reverend Darling heads her off.
No, not there. If you must hide, go into the closet.
Points to it.
Come quick, Ed.
Well, of all the goings on I ever seen, what's the idea of the stampede, Winnie?
Exeunt Myra and Ed into closet on the left.
I wonder what all this means.
Stares at the licenses and the two hiding places.
2 Winifred Bronsons, each afraid to be seen by friends. If they finally both get married, it ought to look after this week's grocery bill.
Knock heard at door at right.
Who's next on the program, I wonder?
Opens door.
Good afternoon.
Pete, off stage.
Are you the Reverend Mr. Darling?
I am.
We've come to see you on a business proposition.
Step right in.
Enter Olga and Pete, door at right.
You execute legal documents, don't you?
Perhaps you are looking for a notary public.
Nah, I guess this job is in your line.
We want the minister.
We've got a marriage license here, and we want it used at once.
Hands it over.
Well, this is my busy day.
Ain't your time to marry us?
Oh, yes, certainly. I meant it is a busy day marrying. 2 other couples have come before you.
The guy at Town Hall said something this morning about getting writer's cramp. Funny guy.
Who?
The gink which swaps them papers off for money.
I don't think so.
I do. When I gave him Winnie's name, he said, "Holy smoke! What kind of a contest are you city fellers running?
Winnie's name. I understand his perplexity perfectly.
Then he passed a remark about some women running a he-harem.
Winnie.
Olga is staring around the room. Pete nudges her.
He's talking to you.
Yes, sir. Ben Winnie.
Well, well.
Thank you, yes.
What?
Ben well.
The back of the license isn't filled out, I see. Let's attend to that.
Sits and takes up pen.
Fire away.
Born?
Yes.
I mean, where?
New York.
Age?
8.
Reverend Darling regarding him curiously.
I mean, how many birthdays have you had?
8.
Are you in your right senses, man?
Don't joke with him, Petey. Maybe other people want to get married. Hurry up.
Reverend Darling glancing at the door at center and the left.
Yes, a whole house full of them. Now, tell me the date of your birth.
That's different. I was born in 1884, on the 29th day of February. That would leap year. If I had been born a day earlier, a day later, I would have had 38 birthdays by now. But as it is, I have seen only 8 February 29ths.
I'll put the date down and let it go at that. What is your occupation?
Politician.
I mean, how do you earn your living?
By being a pol, I tell you. I don't get a cent for anything else.
That is a popular profession in this country, isn't it?
But it gets overcrowded if you don't keep the weeds cut down. I don't let them grow in my ward.
I guess this side is all right.
Turns license over.
Winifred Bronson?
Peers at Olga over his spectacles.
Ben ready?
Nervously slicks back her hair and fusses with dress.
So I see.
Stares at them, thinking. Suddenly rises.
Wait until I call my wife. We shall need her as a witness.
Exit door at center.
Now we are getting someplace, Angel Face. You won't be Winnie Bronson much longer.
Olga attempting to confess.
Oh, Pete, I ain't been Winnie Bronson long.
Not compared with the time you're going to be Mrs. McGlinchey.
I been sorry that I fooled you, Pete.
Forget it now. I'll admit you did have me scared when you said you didn't love me. But it's all right.
I just wanted you to ask me again.
Huh?
What will Margaret say when she finds?
I'll settle with sister. Now don't find anything else to worry about.
I used to worry for one thing.
Don't worry over anything on your wedding day.
Pete, won't you let me tell you? I ain't myself. You think that?
I know you ain't yourself.
Do ya?
This excitement has you up in the air, but you will soon be yourself again. Getting spliced ain't half so exciting as watching election returns.
Pete, you must understand. I been a cook. I make the pies and cakes.
Maybe I ain't glad of it, Angel Face. I'm sick of eating in one-arm joints. Honest, if I didn't believe you was a cook, I'd throw you over.
The name on the paper that he took?
Can't worry. The minister said the paper was okay, and he knows. It's part of his trade.
Remember those letters that you got?
I'll say I do. I'd keep 'em in the safe.
I got to tell ya, they was...
The sweetest lines which was ever wrote. They is why I am here.
I been glad that they was wrote, but...
Pete, putting an arm around her.
But it's nice not to have to write, eh?
Pete, you been grand.
And you are...
I been Winnie Bronson, you think. But Bane?
They are startled by a furious knocking at the door at right. Arthur off stage.
Hello? Hello?
More knocking.
Mr. Darling, are you at home?
Oh my!
I'd better open the door. Someone may be hurt.
Olga holds him.
No, that voice, it bane Mr. Arthur.
Arthur off stage after more knocking.
Mr. Darling, let me in!
We must hide.
Sees screen up right.
Come, we'll be married later. He mustn't see us now.
Pulls him behind screen as Reverend Darling enters hurriedly at door at center, closing door behind him. The knocking persists.
Here, here! Don't break the door!
Notices that Olga and Pete have disappeared.
Why? Where did they go?
Mr. Darling! Mr. Darling!
I'm coming.
Opens door at right.
My good man, what is the trouble?
Enter Arthur, out of breath, with hair and collar awry. Winnie, struggling and kicking, still enveloped in the table cover, is in his arms.
Can you perform a marriage at once?
I am about to do my afternoon's marrying. One more won't matter.
Fine.
Who wishes to be married?
I do. And here is the bride.
Stands Winnie on her feet and removes table cover.
You brute! Arthur Gray, you caveman! How dare you!
What have we here? I cannot marry anyone against their wish, and this young lady evidently objects.
Object? You just bet I do.
Young man, what are you up to? It seems to me that I had better call the authorities.
I am engaged to this young lady.
You are not. I break it.
Removes her diamond and forces it into his hand.
I believe that you can be arrested for kidnapping.
To Winnie.
Has this man brought you here against your will?
Did I stroll in, clinging lovingly to his arm?
This is a most serious offense.
You do not understand the circumstances.
It is against the law to force any person into matrimony.
Just a minute, Mr. Darling.
To Winnie.
For the last time, I ask you to marry me. If you refuse, I shall go away and never come near you again.
Takes license from his pocket.
Is that to be used now or not?
I wouldn't marry you now if you groveled in the dust at my feet, so you needn't think that any of this high-handed dramatic movie stuff is going to get you anywhere.
Then it is the parting of ways. From now on, I'll forget that such a person as Winifred Bronson exists.
Winifred Bronson? Are you Winifred Bronson?
He grabs the license from Arthur and looks at it.
I most certainly am Winifred Bronson, and Winifred Bronson I shall remain.
Pete, coming from behind screen.
Reverend Darling, these people lie.
It's Pete.
This girl is a maid, Olga, who is employed by Miss Winifred Bronson.
Oh dear, oh dear!
This man is crazy. This is Miss Bronson.
You ask anybody in the bloody 19th if Thunder and Pete ever twisted the truth.
I'll twist your neck.
Before you do, allow me to suggest that yours is liable to be twisted first.
Drags the trembling Olga from behind screen.
Mr. Darling, here is Miss Bronson.
Olga!
Oh, my lord?
Ed, coming from the closet.
Parson, I guess it's time I horned in on the talk. I agrees with this gentleman.
Indicating Pete.
When he says that this yer caveman is a lying. But after that, I don't agree nohow. He's telling low-down fairy tales himself.
What do you mean?
Ed, referring to Winnie.
This yer girl ain't Winnie, and she ain't named Olga neither. She's a servant named Myra. Now, Parson, let me acquaint this yer people with Miss Winnie Bronson.
Brings Myra out.
What are you doing here?
I'm scared stiff.
Ed, pointing at Olga.
What that is, I don't know.
Who are you, you big four-flusher?
Ed, patting his holster.
I'm the fella who's going to pump you full of lead after you get through twisting the wild youngster's neck.
He turns to Arthur.
Young fella, you all would be strung up down my way for stealing a horse, to say nothing of appropriating a lady. It will give me pleasure to see your neck twisted.
Are you all madmen?
Valentine bursts in at center, a wild look on his face.
Yes, that is it. They are all either raving, crazy, mad, or downright liars.
Val, what are you doing here? Where did you come from?
It matters not from whence I came. Fate has sent me to protect the fair name of my betrothed, Winifred Bronson.
Pointing to Winnie.
This person is a servant. That is true enough. But her name is not Olga, and it is not Myra. It is Alice, and whosoever says differently lies. And all who say that Winifred Bronson is one of these three must settle with me. With me!
Beats his breast wildly and glares at each in turn.
Behold, the real Miss Bronson!
Opens door at center wide, and Alice steps forward trembling.
You lie! You all forgot your straitjacket when you got away from your keeper.
Don't insult me, you Western ruffian!
You all slipped up on your geography. And say, Sonny, slip me your calling card. I don't know just exactly what to call you all.
I am the one who's going to make you pay. After you shoot him.
Points at Pete.
After he twists his neck.
Pointing at Arthur.
Oh dear, oh dear!
Valentine seizing Alice by the hand.
Reverend darling, proceed to unite Winifred Bronson and Valentine Romaine in the holy bonds of matrimony.
Don't do it.
They're fakes.
I'll shoot the first one who says I do.
Just a minute. I believe each of you gentlemen individually, but collectively, I'm afraid that is impossible.
Turns to Winnie.
Here is a young woman who has been identified as 4 different persons, and these other ladies have 2 identities apiece, and here are 4 licenses bearing the name of Winifred Bronson. I shall marry Winifred Bronson only when her identity is sworn to by her sister, for whom I have telephoned.
Myra has sidled over to Olga.
I'm scared most to death. Let's run.
I don't want to lose my pity.
Let's tell him then. Mr. Minister, I'm Myra.
And Bane Olga.
Ed to Myra.
Sit tight, Winnie. Don't let this local bunch stampede you.
I don't care who you are.
To Olga.
Don't let this crowd throw a scare into you, Winnie.
If confessions are in order, I might as well admit that I am Alice.
Valentine to Alice.
Oh, Winifred, be different from the others. Don't be a sheep. Don't perjure yourself just because the others have. They couldn't scare me into admitting I wasn't myself. Mr. Darling, this is Winnie.
I am Winnie. I.
You're crazy. Don't I know Winnie? Hasn't she been writing to me for a month?
She has been writing to me.
I guess that I received her letters.
I haven't any letters, but I've been coming to see her every week.
You all came to see Miss Margaret. Now why are you all running off to a parson with her maid?
You know your Miss Margaret's steady. What a shameful way to treat her.
What is this mess, anyway?
If you are a man, you will take that female Jekyll and Hyde back to the asylum and beg forgiveness on your bended knees from Margaret.
Keep still, all of you, until Miss Margaret arrives. Then perhaps one of you gentlemen may marry Winifred, whoever she is.
I won't. I wash my hands of the whole affair.
To Winnie.
This is the last you see of me. Goodbye.
Starts for door at right.
Just a minute. No one leaves this room until Miss Bronson arrives.
Very well. I'll wait.
Won't they? I shall.
She starts to go.
Wait, Winnie.
Pete, glaring at Arthur.
Wait, Olga.
I've been waiting.
Valentine, with a defiant look at Pete.
Wait, Alice!
Yes, I am.
Ed, patting his holster, glaring at Valentine.
Wait, Myra?
I'm too scared to run.
Pete to Olga, Valentine to Alice, Ed to Myra, together as they point at Winnie.
I mean her!
I am Winnie, I tell you, you thick-skulled, obstinate things. And I won't marry any man in this room. In fact, the man I would marry hasn't been born.
Glares at Arthur.
Fine mess you've gotten me into. I'll never forgive you.
I never want forgiveness. I'm through.
Speaks so calmly that Winnie's temper is penetrated by the fear he means it. She wilts perceptibly. Knock is heard at door at right.
At last.
Hurries to the door at right.
Miss Margaret Bronson?
Margaret, off stage.
Yes, I hurried as fast as I could. What is it?
Come in.
Enter Margaret, door at right. All, with outstretched hands, implore her.
Margaret!
What are you all doing here?
I came to marry Winnie.
Margaret, quick, tell who we are.
Alice, what is the trouble?
There, did you hear that? She called me Alice.
But what does it mean?
Val, she is Alice Carter. It is not her fault that she deceived you.
Val, forgive me. Forgive me.
Valentine, drawing her to him.
There's nothing to forgive. What's in a name?
Winnie is by now crying softly.
Oh, Miss Margaret, tell them I've been Olga Johnson.
Of course you are, and you are not to be blamed for being thought anyone else.
Pity, I love ya, even if I been a cook.
I don't know what all this rumpus is about, but our plans go through as laid out.
I been so happy.
Ed, as he draws Myra to him.
Well, sister, I suppose the branding iron made the wrong mark on this year gal.
I'm afraid that it did.
And I wanted to go to Tonkawa.
Dry them tears and get your own name, whatever it is, on a new license, and we'll hit the trail to Tonkawa tonight.
You ain't mad?
Ain't some big writer said a gal by any name would smell as sweet?
Dear me, what a mix-up. Then this must be Miss Winnie.
Possibly it may be a very foolish little girl who by now has a serious thought or two.
Winnie hides her face in her hands, crying.
Don't you think so, Arthur?
Arthur, in a cold tone, but with a wink at Margaret.
It is no one in whom I have the least bit of interest.
I'm sorry. Goodbye, Art. Write to me once in a while.
Art! Dear Art! Please, please.
Arthur, disregarding Winnie.
My best wishes for happiness to you all. Goodbye, Margaret.
I'm sorry, Art. I'm sorry. Please marry me now, this minute.
Arthur, to Reverend Darling.
I am sorry that we have caused you all this bother.
Takes out a bill.
Here is a wedding fee 20 times over. It would have cost me more for a divorce, and by not marrying us, you have saved me from that.
Winnie, on her knees to Arthur.
Please, please forgive me. I'll go to the North Pole this winter if you wish. I'll slave for you, Arthur. I'll make up for these 3 years. I'm sorry I wrote such terrible letters to these boys, and I'm sorry that I wasn't brave enough to face them. I hope they'll forgive me. I've learned my lesson. I'm tamed. I'll settle down. Please, please marry me, Arthur.
Do you mean it? Will it last?
Begging your pardon, Mr. Gray, I think it will. She is like an ornery bronco, wild and unmanageable until it gets what's coming to it. But once it's broke, you can lead it anywhere. And I think this here little girl is broke to the halter.
Yup. Guess she'll vote for you now.
With a smile at Olga.
I'm glad she writ them letters.
Ed, swinging hands with Myra.
So am I.
I think that you will find that she has come to years of discretion.
One of these licenses is good, then. Shall we use it and then adjourn to town hall and have the others fixed up?
Yes.
They crowd around Winnie and Arthur in a semicircle. Reverend Darling stands before them, back to the audience, prayer book in hand. Winnie, as she takes Arthur's arm.
Mr. Darling, please don't forget to leave in the word obey.
Curtain. End of Act 3. End of Breaking Winnie, a comedy in 3 acts by Carl Webster Pierce.